People who quit their jobs on the first day. What was your I'm outta here moment? On the first day of working at Amazon warehouse, the managers broke down to everyone how a 15-minute break works there. Walking to the break room is 2.5 minutes. 10 minutes of actual break and then 2.5 minutes to go back to your stations. It took me 2.5 minutes to walk to my car and I took a forever break. And then they wonder why they have high turnover. Summer job working for a landscape architect. Got to the job site and he asked me to dig a hole in some rocky dirt. I asked for a shovel. He didn't have one. I asked for a hand spade. He didn't have one. He told me to just dig the hole with my bare hands and then he drove off to another site, leaving me completely alone. I dug for a little bit and then said fuck this and left. Had the job specified that I needed to supply my own tools, I could have, but it didn't, and I wasn't going to work for somebody that expected folks to dig through hard, rocky soil with their hands. Lol, sounds like he sucks at communicating. Those bosses are the worst. I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it is cash in hand, so I could sign on to the dole, unemployment benefit, to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was up to me to illegally collect the dole to subsidize them, I don't know. I've heard of situations similar to this before. Often they've had someone work for them with that arrangement previously, so they think it's somehow normal or okay. You sometimes see people wanting full-time childcare and paying like $100 a week because their friend had been happy with that arrangement. It's a bit different when it's a total stranger who doesn't owe the family any favors. These are the type of people that would take someone's passport to keep them enslaved. I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later the restaurant was investigated for a number of fraud activity. That's illegal. They can't pay you waitstaff tipped wages if you're not getting tipped. Restaurant. Swept under my station when we were closing. Giant brown pile came out with broom from under lowboy fridge. Pile began to scatter. It was hundreds of roaches. Never returned. Had an orientation for an alarm company. Next day manager calls and says don't worry about going into the office and to meet at Planet Hollywood, they like to get to know the employees better over lunch. Next day I go into the office and another employee whom I had not met says you must be Scandal 929. I was like how? They responded like skinned, pretty boy is how the manager described me. In same conversation I found out no one else had ever been invited for a get to know you lunch. I'm out. Which is a shame, as you clearly have well-tuned, internal alarms. You would have been a real asset there. Applied for a job at my longtime favorite restaurant, celebrated my birthday there every year. Owner asks me to come in for basically a tryout, as I communicated I was looking at other job possibilities. I come in and they just stick me on dishwashing for an hour, no biggie. Then their dishwasher doesn't show up, so the kitchen manager asks me to stay on for their lunch rush, say I'll get paid for the hours. I do. Kitchen staff was nice, so I was happy to help out even though I figured I'd be taking a different job. I fill out a time card at the end of the shift and tell the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understands and thanks me for the help. Fast forward a couple weeks and he tells me to email the owner after I ask him if I should pick up my measly paycheck. I do. She basically tells me to fuck off over text. Tells me it was staging and that she told me I wouldn't be paid. I respond that I understand that, but that I stayed an extra 3 hours which I was told I'd be paid for. She stops responding. I decide I want to be petty over the $40, so I get the stat labor department involved. Dude goes in there and makes her pay me for the hours, including the first staging hour. Couple weeks later I got my $40, never went back to that restaurant. Edit. Firstly, petty is not how I see it 2 years later. I'm very glad I did this, and sharing the story with others in my city I learned this practice was very common with local restaurants. Hopefully others learned to stand up for their labor too from my small experience. Secondly, this restaurant closed down a couple weeks after I got that paycheck. The owner made a long-winded complaint on the FB page about how the food culture had changed in the city and her restaurant didn't fit in anymore. Total bullshit, they were always popular. Most people theorized that terrible mismanagement and employee abuse had caught up to her. You're not petty. I wonder how many other people they fleeced for free labor. That's bullshit. Watch what happens if you took $40 out of the till. I was a waitress, the only waitress, at a just opened diner. The boss didn't have me sign any paperwork. Everything was under the table. But that wasn't what made me quit at the end of the night. In order to get me where he wanted me to go, he would pinch my skirt at my upper thigh, not quite the butt but very close, and pull me around like it was a leash. Needed me in the kitchen? Rather than call me. He would come out, pinch my skirt and pull to the kitchen. Needed me at the cash machine? Again, come over to wherever I was. Didn't matter if I was serving a customer, and would grab my skirt to pull me. That act in itself made some customers uncomfortable. Mind you, one couple left an almost 50% tip in the end. But I think it was more out of pity and embarrassment on my behalf. I was supposed to come in the next day, but I called that night and said the job wasn't for me. I came in a couple days later to turn in my apron and he just took a wad of cash out of his pocket and paid me then and there. God, he was creepy. I think it was a smart move to quit. That is seriously creepy. You made a good move. I think it was a smart move to quit. That was absolutely the right call. Anyone who's in a position of authority willing to have fun at their employees' expense like that is someone you definitely don't want to work for. If he was doing that on day one, who knows how far he would have pushed it if you stayed, especially given the creepy vibe you got from him. I wasn't the person, but I was training a new guy at a movie theater. A customer asked for extra butter. She was nice and normal. Not a mean or rude customer. The kind I would pay to handle all day long. He puts the popcorn tub down, says I'm going to the bathroom, takes off his apron and walks out the front door and never came back. Maybe he shat his pants and couldn't bear the thought of returning. He had better things to do. Answered an ad in the paper. This was the mid-90s, what seemed to be an office job, making sales calls when I was in college. Did a phone interview and was called back for an in-person interview. When I go to the interview, I'm led into a room with about 50 other people and a small stage at the front of the room. We're all somewhat confused as to what is going on. Finally a guy gets on the stage and informs us that we've been selected for the opportunity to sell Cutco. Me and 2/3 RDS of the rest stood up and walked out. I have a story like that too. Job interview that ended up being some group pitch to sell insurance. I also walked out. Anytime I see more than a dozen people for a job interview, I just nope the fuck right out. If it's not door-to-door sales paid only on commission, it's some MLM. I wish some job interviews would be more forthcoming about that. Some places have outright lied to me. Electronics store. My first day we had to attend a class where they teach people how to upsell folks. Basically walked you through ignoring what they ask you for and using their ignorance of the equipment against them. I thought that was really scuzzy. Then they went on to tell us about a commission-style bonus program that basically forced employees to upsell everyone. When we took the break for lunch that first day, I peaced out and went home. Never got paid for those 4 hours, but I never regretted bouncing on that. I noped out of an interview one time. Thanked them at the end and said it wasn't for me. Those interviewing, management level folks, started arguing with each other in front of me during the interview. I figured, if this is the vibe at the management level, then I sure as hell don't want to be your employee. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.